The following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
This is not a hunger strike. They're going to kill him and they're not going to eat until they do it.
I don't get it.
These are great car jokes, man.
These are great car jokes that incorporate ancient religion, so keep up, dude.
The Zealots are basically just terrorists.
Oh, no.
Is that Kermit the Frog?
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Second Rate Saints podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Caleb. To my left is...
I'm Joel, and to my left...
I'm Colton, and to my left...
It's me, Caleb. I guess we got to be lying about the shape, eh? It's more like a triangle.
It's never been a circle. There's
It's
only
a
ever been four of
spiritual
us.
circle, okay?
That sucks. Anyway, so we're missing Josh and Stuart/Cole.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sad. But, Joel, where can people find episodes with them?
For all of our past and future episodes, you can check us out at secondраtesaints.com. If you have a long-form question, you can email us at secondраtesaints@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, you can go to secondраtesaints.com and go to the Buy Me a Coffee link. Thank you to all of our listeners who have supported the show so far. It's actually been super encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. Is there anything else? We got blog posts and book reviews.
Twitter.
And you can check us out on Instagram and Twitter. We haven't been super active there lately, but if you're active there, we'll be active there, I guess. Yeah, that's the deal. And let's start off the show like we do most by asking the age-old question to Colton today. What have you read?
Oh, well, I read a book that you read first, actually.
Yeah, I gave it to you after. Yeah.
Very good. It's called Leaf by Niggle by Tolkien.
Yeah.
J.R.R. Tolkien. If you don't know who that is, then you're not allowed to
If you
listen
don't
to
know
the
who we're
podcast.
talking about.
It's a short story written by him a long time ago, but it's fantastic.
Wasn't it
I'm a
like
big fan.
27 or something?
27?
1927. I thought I looked at it earlier and it said that. Yeah.
That's his most influential work, right?
It's definitely not.
No one's heard of anything else he's written, so yeah.
The reason I have this book is because there was a podcast I was listening to for a little while called Classical Stuff You Should Know, which for me was kind of an inspiration for this podcast. We have a different focus, but they love going through classical works. And this was one of the ones that they brought up. And because of that, for the last probably 6 months to a year, every bookstore that I visit, I will ask them if they have a copy of this book, Leaf by Niggle. It actually was recommended by Timothy Keller before he passed. It was famously, he would recommend it to people, which is surprising because it's a very Catholic book in some of its kind of imagery and ideas. But yeah, so I just kept looking for it and I couldn't find it. So eventually I just broke down one day and ordered it from Amazon. So I'm sorry, old local bookstores, but you didn't get me with this one. Premise of the book. What do you think of it, Cole?
Fantastic.
So a lot of people have said it's kind of a self-portrait. I'm sorry, I cut you off there, Cole.
That's all right.
I introduced you and then I cut you off. I apologize.
How dare you?
But like, you haven't read The Great Divorce?
Nope.
If you have read The Great Divorce, to me, it feels like Tolkien's take on what C.S. Lewis was writing about.
Right.
Now, C.S. Lewis took a bit of a longer format. I think that's 6 or 7 chapters his is. This one's like 2 or 3, and it's very short. It's like 60 pages.
It's a short story, so yeah.
Yeah, it would fall into that category, right? And I think sometimes it's included in like some of his collections of works.
I think so.
But I could never find any of those either, so very
I
frustrating.
have a couple of them I could have given you.
You have this book in an...
Probably. It wouldn't surprise me, but I've never read it yet.
Well, I haven't. Anyways.
Before this.
What would you say the book is like about, the content of it?
It's kind of debated, but I think...
Really?
Yeah, some people actually don't even think it's about death. And it's clearly about death.
How could it not be about death?
I know, right?
The train imagery, the fact that he shift off to work.
Yeah. So you open on a dude out in the country, and he has one neighbor, and his name is Niggle, and his neighbor is named Mr. Parrish, and Mr. Parrish has a wife as well. And it's kind of an interesting take on Niggle is painting this tree But he's also painting these little leaves. And that's what he does all the time. He's painting. There's literally like no other aspects about him that you know.
Yep. He's also nice to his neighbor.
He's nice to his neighbor, but it also explicitly mentions, and I think that this is a self-insert from Tolkien, that he wishes he wasn't so concerned with his neighbors so that he could focus on his work.
He'd be a bit harder in the head rather than soft in the heart.
That other people's emotions wouldn't bother him so much, right? And I think that's kind of his desire to get back to this larger masterpiece he's working on. Because the more you read the book, the more you're like, okay, the tree is what he was trying to do with the Lord of the Rings.
That's his painting, yeah.
That is his painting, right? That is, well, it's his writing for Tolkien, but for Nagel, it's his painting. And there's a line that he gets caught up on the leaves so much that he can't finish the tree.
Yep.
Right? And it's of course, it's a play on the can't see the forest for the trees. Yep. Right? And he gets caught up in this, and then the reason he wants to finish this so bad is because one of these days, he doesn't know when, but one of these days he's going to have to go on a trip. And when he goes on a trip, he can't take this huge canvas with him.
Yep. And he should prepare, but it'll come suddenly and whatever. And he hasn't been preparing for it.
And that's why I was pretty convinced that it's like, yeah, that's death, right? Like it feels
There's nothing
very much.
else I can see it could be.
There's a driver showing up. Sounds like death to me.
Man bursts into his house and is like, all right, we're going on a trip. Can I pack? Nope, too late.
Yeah.
Come with me.
You should have packed before. Let's go. Yeah.
Get shipped off to the coal mines.
How much can we spoil about this book? Because it's hard to spoil the imagery exactly, because his words are so decisive that unless I'm quoting the whole book to you, it won't really spoil the ending.
I would very much love everyone to read it. It's very short. However, the story is about, just skip this part if you don't want to listen to it.
Yeah, spoiler alert here.
The story is about him dying, going to purgatory, and working on his masterpiece until he finally goes into heaven.
So I think Colton is actually reading a lot onto the text by saying that.
Why?
Because I don't think it's explicitly purgatory.
I think both parts are explicitly. The first part where he's doing manual labor for forever for someone else is then reflected back when he does it with Mr. Parrish in the second part, where Mr. Parrish is the one going through the lower levels of purgatory, and then he's going through the later stages of purgatory by working on the forest, where it's a lot nicer, it's a lot better. And now he has an advocate for him, which is Jesus Christ. But but at that point, he's now helping Mr. Parrish even get through it, much like how he was working for someone else in the first part.
Yeah.
Mr. Parrish works for him, and then Mr. Parrish isn't ready to leave yet because he still has work to do, but also he's waiting for his wife.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic, by the way. I'm a big fan.
So
that's my take. And then going over the mountains because it's his little garden. It's like his own little parish.
Yeah.
That is his space to work and all that. But then him going over the mountains is then him passing on.
Okay.
But that is my interpretation.
who would you say is the target demographic, and who would you recommend it to?
I think anybody who struggles with work, right, with why you're doing what you do, I would kind of recommend it to them, because it is Tolkien accepting the fact that not everyone will care about what he's creating, but somebody will care, right? Like that it might not be like the story ends kind of beautifully, because there's, you know, his house that had his huge painting in it, was deserted after he left on his trip. Mm-hmm. And then when Mr. Parrish also goes to purgatory, well, that house is empty too. And there's a kind of a plot line in there where Mr. Parrish has a huge hole in his roof, and he goes over to Nigel and he says, "Hey, do you have a spare piece of canvas that I can fix my roof with? And Nigel says, "No, I have no canvas to give you for your roof.
It's all just my painting."
And he says that while he's standing in front of this huge painting of his, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one of these things of like, where do you place your value? What is going to be useful? And in the end, they both pass on, and the person who buys the house uses the painting from that house to repair Mr. Parrish's house.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the things that it's kind of ironic, even because you can see the Tolkien stuff in Rings of Power not being used as he intended, right? Like these
How
these
dare
stories.
you even say that?
Right, that's my take on it. Anyways,
Rings of Power sucks.
And then everybody's kind of, you know, mourning is passing a little bit at the end, and they're talking amongst the neighbors, and they said, "Oh, poor Nigel, I didn't even know he painted. right? So it's like, oh, some people will care and not even know that this is part of my life, right? Not even know that this was the creative outlet I had. I don't know. It seems like the book resolves with, even if you think nobody will care, somebody will care, right?
That you leave some impact on the world, no matter
of some
how small.
value to somebody, right? Even if it is just to fix a hole in a roof. And like one of his lesser paintings that he didn't care so much about, somebody framed and put in a museum.
Leaf. That's the name of the book.
The picture was the leaf, not the tree itself, but just the leaf got preserved and put in the museum. And then it burns down. And the book ends with, and that was the last conversation ever had about Nagel.
Yeah.
Right. It's like,
what would you rate the book 1 out of 10? 1 out of 5?
Accessibility and depth, 5 out of 5.
I agree.
Right.
Fantastic.
I think for a short story,
one of the best short stories I've ever read.
You have, I mean, short stories have a kind of a varying quality about them, right? Like,
I'm a bit of a Tolkien fanboy most of the time. But I really tried to hate this one going into it, and I couldn't do it.
Even with all the Catholic imagery, it didn't help you out, eh?
Well, here's the thing. If I believe it to be purgatory, what he's going through, I don't think it matters, especially for the purpose of the story itself. With Tolkien, you have a hard time differentiating what is reality and what is allegory. With Lord of the Rings, it's almost all not allegory, which then in turn becomes allegory in itself.
But just because he can't help it.
Yeah, because he can't help it. It's in the things he makes, you draw the allegory out of the things, the way the things are, rather than what he intends it to be.
It's very physical, but very allegorical as well.
Whereas this book is probably his most metaphorical, because short stories have a point. This one has a point. And you say this about the creative stuff, that one piece of his thing is going to turn into whatever, or is going to be meaningful to someone. And I agree that that's true. And that's what one of the points is. I also think that one of the points of the book is this idea of like your work being worthwhile. It's not just like whether you're creative or whatever. There's purpose in everything you do, no matter how, because the conversation at the end between the two voices, one of them says that he wasn't good for nothing in life and whatever, he couldn't even do whatever. And then the other one's like, sure, but there's still purpose for whatever. And they talk.
Well, because there's also a subtle critique of kind of the academic system in the end, which you don't really expect. But then there's a schoolmaster and I think a city planner or something similar like that. The counselor, that bought the two houses. And he was like, Nagel was of no use. And he goes, well, it depends what you mean by use. And he goes, well, no economic and social use. And it's like, oh, well, that's a different type of use than what I was thinking, right? Like, and he kind of plays with this of like, what we emphasize is what we get, right? Where we see use, we will have use, I think that's cool.
I think that the book is for everybody, not just creative people. I think there's something to get out of it, even if and so short that you'll find something.
Afternoon,
Don't get hung up on the fact that there probably, in my opinion, is purgatory in the book, because it does not matter. Don't get hung up on the theology stuff, even though it is his most theological work, if you ask me.
Really?
I mean, what else would it be? Baron and Luthien? Not really.
No.
Silmarillion?
I guess it would be his most theological. I never thought of it that way. But when I was reading it. But
it's not really theological at all. Anyway, I think it's fantastic. I give it a 5 out of 5 for what it is. I'd give it to anybody.
Yeah, I would talk about it for longer than it takes to read the book. So we can continue on.
Yes. We're going to do, as people have seen in the title, we're continuing on with our Acts series. So we're actually getting towards the end. Things are starting to ramp up with Paul. So previously on Acts, Paul has been traveling back to Jerusalem. He's wanted to make it there in time for Pentecost. People have been telling him, by even the Holy Spirit revealing to them, hey, when he arrives, he will be bound and chained. You're not going to see him again. And so, like, as he's traveling, meeting these churches, coming back to Jerusalem, there's this kind of this heartbreak of, our beloved Paul this is the last time. And he's going to die. And they're not going with death, I think, so far. I think so. The implications are binding, and he won't be returning. Right. Death may not be quite there yet.
That's fair.
But regardless, he's going to suffer, right? He's going there. And we talked about how he arrives in Jerusalem, meets James, and they discuss, hey, here's the plan. You're going to shave your head and you're going to go. But as soon as the crowd, and specifically the Jews from Antioch, not Antioch, Asia Minor, see him, they get the crowd into a stir, and then they come at him, and then they start trying to kill him. Romans come out, they save him, right? And he addresses the Jews, like they save him, they bring him to the garrison, the fort or whatever. And he's like, hey, let me speak to my people, right? Fine, okay. Goes through this whole spiel of Jesus and stuff, and then actually the crowd doesn't lose their mind until he mentions that God is now treating Gentiles like Jews. That's when the crowd loses their mind. And then because of that, the Romans are like, okay, you know what? Who are you? What are you doing? Yeah. Take him to the torture chamber and find out. They strap him all down. And then that's when Paul, whether through exhaustion or whether it's just because funny, that's when he tells the guy that's going to torture him. He's like, hey, should you be torturing a Roman citizen? And then the centurion's like, oh, no.
Yes. This is bad news.
Yes. And then that kind of takes off where we are in finishing chapter 22, just the last few verses, as that bleeds into 23 and 24. So Colton, Josh is not here. So your lovely voice gets to read the scripture.
All right. First thing he says is currently on Acts.
Yes. He does say that every time, doesn't he?
We'll read from 22:30 to 23:5. But on the next day, desiring to know the real reason why he was being accused by the Jews, he unbound him and commanded the chief priests and all the council to meet. And he brought Paul down and set him before them. And looking intently at the council, Paul said, brothers, I have lived my life before God in all good conscience up to this day. And the high priest Ananias commanded those who stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you sitting there to judge me according to the law, and yet contrary to the law, you order me to be struck? Those who stood by said, would you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I didn't know, brothers, that he was the high priest, for it is written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people.
This is funny to me.
It's hilarious. Why is it funny, Caleb?
So, like when you read John, there's a weird thing about who's high priest, Ananias, Caiaphas, who they're related. Ananias is the father-in-law of Caiaphas. I'm wondering, and Paul would have known that, like, you know, he's getting letters from the Sanhedrin. He knows. I think, and the title of high priest went from Ananias, looks like, to Caiaphas, and at this moment, it looks like it actually probably went back to Ananias. Judging with how poorly things ended with Caiaphas. Although there's no real way to prove that. Regardless, what I find interesting is Ananias does this, and then Paul probably went, you're not the high priest. I can say whatever. And he's like, oh, he is the high priest. All right. Yeah, you're right. The scriptures tell me I shouldn't be mean.
What do we think of the insult whitewashed wall?
I think it shows that he is well aware of Christ's whitewashed tombs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Would that have been just a term of the day? Do we know? Or is that...
Think it's foreshadowing for the Wailing Wall?
No. That's... Jeez Louise.
Didn't whaling stop in the 1400s? No, I meant 1800s, but that wasn't a good joke, so we'll move on.
The rest of the joke, therefore, it's that funny.
Yeah.
No, I think it's indicative of Christ's whitewashed tomb stuff.
Okay.
I think it shows that he's aware of Christ's sayings.
Right. I didn't look into this term before, although like everyone else, it sticks out when he just calls him a whitewashed wall, because I think there's a lot of better insults he could have used. But
you're talking about unconventional insults stick the most.
That's true.
Like, do you have any idea how many times like you've been called an idiot?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh yeah.
But imagine all the people who are trying to look into this, trying to find the specific meaning for it.
If somebody calls you an idiot, you've been called an idiot 10,000 times. But if somebody calls you a damp rag,
that's true.
it's like a damp rag. What?
A limp noodle.
That's going to stay with you. Anyway.
That's fair. Creativity and anger.
Oh, absolutely.
No,
they go hand in hand.
Fair. I guess it does just link right to what Christ says about whitewashed tombs. But.
Is the whitewashed wall a reference to like just stripping what was already there and just taking it away as if there's... Is he calling him stupid is basically what I'm trying to say.
Like he's just bare, blank.
Yeah.
You blank slate.
You smooth brain.
I didn't look into it beforehand, so I could just be wrong there.
No, I go with it's a callback to the whitewashed tombs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I do find it interesting that God's going to strike you. Where he's just struck in the mouth, and then he immediately goes like, you know what? No, God's coming for you.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Goes all Johnny Cash. God's going to cut you down.
Well, it reminds me of the Nahum passage that we've talked about before. That like the Lord will not need to strike twice.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Here, because he talks about the like God will strike you, and it's like, this is the high priest. And he's like, oh, I didn't know. You did mention that you thought that it could be that because Caiaphas and Ananias may have switched roles, and they were kind of both also high priest, sort of at the same time, kind of.
You can tell like there's pulling strings going on between Ananias and
yeah, and as
Caiaphas.
we'll see a little bit later, there's been fights even internally within the Sanhedrin itself.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of political stuff going behind the scenes. Do you think that Paul did know that Ananias was the high priest?
I don't think so.
I know we talked about it, but if he did, then the purpose of this would be then to show to them that he is a devout Jew, that he does know the law. Because then when he's like, he'll strike you down. They're like, this is the high priest. He's like, actually, I'm a good Jew. I know what I'm supposed to do and what I'm supposed to say. That way, then already turning them to his side.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think
either,
it's a little too meta.
Okay. That would be the only reason I could see if he did know why he would do it. But I agree. I think the political turmoil at this time is confusing enough. I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt. He would not know who's high priest in this specific instance.
And it's worth pointing out, he may have known Ananias was the high priest. Dude was just almost lynched by a mob and had to get dragged by Roman guards away.
Mm-hmm. And they tried to talk to them again, and they immediately started yelling at him again.
Yeah. And so is it possible that swollen eyes and beat up, and because the next day, the dude just can't recognize that that's Ananias?
You know, I didn't think about that. Fair enough.
It's like it's possible.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but that is fun.
It's reasonable at least.
100%. Is there anything else we want to say about this intro to what he's going to say to the Sanhedrin?
Nah.
I think we're good.
All right, then we shall move on. We're going to talk about verses 6. This is 23, verses 6 to 11. Now, when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, "Brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. It is with respect to the hope and the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial." And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit. But the Pharisees acknowledge them all. Then a great clamor arose, and some of the scribes of the Pharisees' party stood up and contended sharply, "We find nothing wrong in this man. What if a spirit or an angel spoke to him?" And when dissension became violent, the tribune, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them, commanded the soldiers to go down and take him away from them by force and bring him into the barracks. The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, "Take courage, for as you have testified the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome."
Paul is over here playing 4D chess.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, if you'd like to listen to more about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, check out our Jewish sect episode.
It's fantastic. I really enjoyed that.
I thought that was actually a pretty well researched one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of, again, this political problems. The Sadducees and the Pharisees are constantly at war with each other in terms of what is the proper interpretation of the law and the Tanakh and all that.
I think they're also political parties in a large way, right? That
more the Sadducees simply because of their relationship to upper class society.
Yeah.
But
that depends on who's ruling at the time, right? Like there was
true.
a back and forth between the Pharisees and the Sadducees.
I thought a lot of it was they started as philosophical movements and then turned into more political ones, kind of like the Stoics and the Epicureans and stuff.
At times, society. Sadducees are a hard one because everything we have written
is by Pharisees.
is by other groups, Christians or Pharisees. It appears more as though they were the conservative group.
Yeah.
And were of the upper class, very closely associated with the Jewish temple.
Yeah.
That's probably about all you can really do. Now, our text here points out that for the Sadducees say there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. People often extrapolate to say, well, the Sadducees don't believe in angels or spirits.
That's not quite a fair description.
And what's depicted, like, again, they're like, well, the argument goes, is that, well, they just believe that the first 5 books of the Bible, books of Moses, the Pentateuch,
the Torah,
is scripture. And then everything else is like useful. The way, let's say, a modern Protestant may see the Apocrypha is it's useful, but not scripture. Right. Yeah. However, the Pharisees would see all of the Old Testament, what we have now, as God breathed. So that would be the Christian position as well. There's tons of angels all in the Pentateuch.
Yeah.
So there's that. And so the argument, and linguistically you can build it from the occurrences where it talks about how, well, they don't believe in the resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit.
Right.
And the argument is that they didn't believe that the person is resurrected as an angel or as a spirit, because that was a common belief.
Yep.
That's how the resurrection is going to happen.
Right.
Whether it's physical or maybe if it's not physical, well, then maybe you become some spiritual thing, or maybe that's what angels are.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the Sadducees didn't believe in any resurrection, or the person becomes an angel, or the person becomes a spirit.
Yeah.
There is no resurrection at all. Whereas the Pharisees, so the argument goes to a certain degree, maybe had a split idea on exactly how the resurrection worked.
Yeah. And again, it's been 2,000 years with the only real works that were written about the Sadducees were by other people descending them.
Yes.
Condescending them. So it's hard to say exactly what they believed. Either way, Paul's very smart to immediately turn them on each other. Yeah. Because they're all very mad at him.
And why would he say that what he's on trial? He's clearly on trial for about the Christ. But why would he say, I haven't answered this, but why do you guys think he would say he's on trial for the resurrection of the dead?
Because he would align himself with the larger party. That would be my guess. Like as if you were doing like political strategy type deals. Yeah.
Also, it's about Jesus's bodily resurrection, right?
Yeah.
That's not,
but he doesn't, he masks it.
Yeah.
He's smart. Also, what he does there is Jesus is the proof of the physical resurrection. Jesus is the firstborn among the dead, as he would say in Colossians, right? And so
it's not like he's lying. He's not lying here.
No, he's like, if Christ is raised from the dead, it is the most significant
eschatological thing that's happened
event
ever.
That they've seen. He is the proof of the theological exploration of that, right? Yeah. Of what's happening in Daniel. He's the foretaste of that, the first fruits.
Also the answer between the problem between.
It's also raised on the first fruit, the festival of first fruits, but whatever.
Yeah. This is Jesus, by resurrecting bodily, he shows what this debate between the Sadducees and Pharisees, what the answer actually is.
Yeah. But it is still a third option. Like that is Paul appealing to the crowd, but he's not actually appealing to what they believe. He is saying,
he's making them fight.
It's the same as the unknown God is. Yes, what you believe, but better.
Absolutely.
But what he does is he maneuvers it by, he knows what he's trying to say.
Yes.
But he articulates it in such a way as to make the difference between the Sadducees and the Pharisees more violent.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it's funny, the Tribune's just watching. Also, the Tribune watched him get hit then.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Tribune's just watching and be like, okay, every time this guy comes and talks to the Jews, they just lose their mind.
That's true.
I think that's what's clever about Paul's evangelism, though, is that like the way he does what you would call apologetics, right?
Oh, yeah.
It reminds me of a quote that Gavin Ortland said on a recent interview we did. If you know Gavin Ortland, everybody would probably know that. If you found this podcast, you've probably found Gavin Ortland. But he had a quote about apologetics where it's like, if you're going to push over someone's worldview, make sure you're there to catch them, right? Like, so rather than just trying to destroy the beliefs of those in the room with him, he is subverting that belief and allowing it to come into full truth, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of a beautiful way to do that. Especially
when them fight each other.
Yeah, especially when you just had the tar beat out of you and you're standing in the middle of like two political parties that are, you know.
It should also be noted that these people are probably, if he didn't do this, likely would have condemned him. If he tried to stand on a very simple, I come to you just proclaiming Jesus Christ and whatever, they would be like, oh, you're one of those crazy people, one of the Nazarenes.
I don't think Paul's trying to get out of it. I think he's trying to get into it. I think a little bit.
Well, I think what he's trying to do is he's trying what he immediately did. And well, it may have blown up and then that was his escape route. If we're going to try to figure out what was Paul trying to do? I think what he's trying to do is draw a division down the center line and then have half the group go, okay, but he's not totally wrong.
Yeah.
And once you have half the group already kind of like, yeah, but you can't condemn him like crazy. He's not.
Yeah.
I agree with him a little bit, right? You start to build some buy-in from a certain category.
Right.
Yeah. However, it was enough to just light the tinderbox. So
it was very volatile. Yeah. And Joel, I think you are right. Cause he does, like when God comes to him to the vision, in the vision, I mean, he does say, you have testified my facts to the Jerusalem. I will also make you do so in Rome, which, spoilers, doesn't happen in Acts. It's more pointed towards that that's something he's going to do.
Yeah. He's left to Rome.
Well, he does arrive in Rome.
Yeah, that's true.
The gospel reaches the farthest end of the world. Yeah. Which is the center of the pagan
place
power.
In the world.
I just think that's funny anyway.
But, I think this is his witness to the Sadducees and Pharisees. That's what this is supposed to be.
It does. God telling him that he is he's going to testify at the facts of me. That would be Jesus. Yep. So and it says that the Lord stood and said to him. It's mentioning that that Christ is present in some way in that. He stood and said to
physically,
him. Yeah. And so there's probably in the similar way that the road to Damascus aspect, although maybe not the, lights.
He's not blind.
Not at this moment. Well, unless the tars beat out of him and he can't see who's in front of him. Yeah. But take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you will testify in Rome. He hasn't really testified the facts about Christ's resurrection and death. Not in what we just read. He's just like, hey, so you guys know about the resurrection, and then the crowd implodes. Mm-hmm. But
do you think Luke is trying to say that this is how he testified to the Sanhedrin?
I think so.
I think so too. You're right. He's not very specific, but by saying he is testifying about the resurrection, he is saying the truth, and he is also agreeing, sort of, kind of, with the Pharisees, just not really.
And he may have been testifying elsewhere in Jerusalem about it. It's just not recorded in Acts.
Yeah, he's there for a few days.
Yeah.
So it's really hard when you're preaching to know if you did like a good job, right? Then, typically people don't clap and they don't laugh. There's no response,
They do in Josh's church all the time.
But if Jesus showed up at the end and said, yeah, them was facts. Like, you would feel
That's
pretty
fair,
good.
yeah.
So like, yeah,
Why isn't that
fair
happening
enough,
to me
Paul.
more?
You should be excited to go to Rome at this point.
You're getting bumped up from the minor leagues in Jerusalem. Back, go to Rome.
You get a standing ovation from someone who formerly didn't
From
have
Christ.
a physical body. Like that's big. That's a big
What do you mean
deal.
Christ had a physical body? What are you talking about?
That's what I'm saying. Is now Christ does have a physical body, but
That's true.
God became incarnate to give you a standing ovation, and that's awesome. That's what's happening. Probably. That's a pretty
beginning.
brutal line, but I don't know. There's something so personal about that at the very
sure.
end that I've never seen really highlighted anywhere. We
There's
also preach Damascus all the time.
And
but
so it's a way of Luke saying, Paul, you did good. And that what Paul was doing here was a good thing.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. God approved preaching.
Well,
Yeah,
you
dude.
also have the image of stoning of Stephen of Christ standing.
Yeah.
Right.
At the right hand of.
The right hand of the Father. I don't know. I've heard different sermons from different people on it, that passage and this, about how it's because of the brotherly nature that relationship that we have with Christ, that he receives us as friend, However, you have tons of passages also, like especially in Revelation, where it's, and God and the Lord's and God sits upon the throne with Christ at the center. And it's like, what does that mean? And there's, yeah.
Biblical theology on standing is what you're talking about?
Yeah, actually.
The biblical theology of standing would be kind of sick, though, wouldn't it?
No, there is significance.
Yeah.
One,
It's
that
just beyond me.
it is beyond, and it's going to get into eschatological or theological stuff, I think.
That's both.
No, I mean theological as in big T theological, like the study of God.
theology proper the study of
that's it,
God.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
If I had to guess. Anyway, we don't have time to talk about that right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's skip the theology of God. Get back to the text.
Let's talk about Acts. Okay. Should I keep reading?
Of course.
Okay. This is 23:12-22. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. Now therefore you, along with the council, give notice to the tribune to bring him down to you, as though you were ready to determine his case more exactly, and we are ready to kill him before he comes near." Now the son of Paul's sister heard of their ambush, so he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him." So he took him and brought him to the tribune and said, "Paul, the prisoner called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, as he has something to say to you." The tribune took him by the hand and going aside asked him privately, "What is it that you have to tell me?" And he said, "The Jews have agreed to ask to bring Paul to the council tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire somewhat more closely about him. But do not be persuaded by them, for more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for him, and have bound themselves by an oath to neither eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for your consent." So the tribune dismissed the young man, charging him, "Tell no one that you have informed me of these things."
You're going to get him.
Yeah, this is taking the step a bit further than... There's been a few steps that the Jews have taken. One, tried to lynch him.
Mm-hmm.
2, yelled at him a lot and told the Romans to get rid of him. 3, brought him to the... this was more the Romans doing it, but brought him before the Sanhedrin. And now 4, they're just going to resort to cold-blooded murder.
We're going to try and lynch him again.
Well, I think what you have is, and I don't know.
But this is premeditated.
We kind of already did this, though.
It seems more like, so you have the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and I may be totally reading this onto the text, so slap me if this is unjust. Joel's ready.
I'm across the room, but I'm wound up.
Just walk across the room. Get him.
Oh,
Yep.
You kind of, are these the zealots that have come to the Sanhedrin to go like, "Hey, you know what? If you call him there, we'll kill him for you"?
Maybe. I don't think so.
It'd be cool though, right?
It would be cool. We again in our Jewish sect video or episode, we talked about the Sadducees, Pharisees, Essenes, and the Zealots.
Did we?
Kinda.
Okay.
We did mention it.
I think we mostly just did Pharisees and Sadducees.
We did. We briefly covered the Essenes and the Zealots as well. The Zealots are basically just terrorists.
Oh no.
Well, that's kind of reading a lot onto the text, to be honest with you.
I don't think so. They're basically just terrorists.
What's the difference between no, I'm not going to make that joke.
Don't make that joke.
What do you mean?
But these 40, yes, it's cold-blooded murder, but also the high priests and all the chief priests are all implicit in it at this point. Before it was the people, now it's even the high priests or not the high priest, but the other priests and the council are involved, which is brutal. This is the leaders that he just praised, sorta, a bit earlier, are now planning sorta to kill him. It's more like they've been pressured into doing so, I think. This vow that they've taken is a pretty extreme vow, but would have been seen as very committed. Mm-hmm. I'm talking quite a bit, but I learned just the other day that in one of the town that I work, apparently there was a guy who, there was a pickleball wall near a school that, I don't know, people would play on, whatever.
Pickleball wall?
And then a guy who lived near it took a, what was it called? A hunger strike, and told the city that if they don't get rid of it, he's going to starve himself to death. This is real, by the way.
Yeah,
This is 100% real.
Hates pickleball.
Yeah, actually, though, because apparently of the noise and whatever. So the city relented and they got rid of the wall.
That's so funny.
It's horrible.
Supposedly
Was he a zealot?
He was zealous, yeah.
Supposedly I've been told, at least,
Not
I
a terrorist,
have
though.
family that like back in
They play
Ireland
pickleball?
that were part of the
IRA?
in prison that hunger striked to death during the Troubles.
Really?
Yeah.
In Ireland?
Yeah.
Jeez.
At least my family's told me that. I don't know if that's true, but
It's definitely true.
yeah.
I choose to believe it.
It is awesome.
Anyway, hunger strikes kind
That's
of work.
kind of the same thing as
power.
40 guys trying to kill you and they won't have a snack
I mean,
until they do.
Gandhi did it to the British Empire and it worked.
Kind of hangry, if you
It
ask
did work,
me.
yeah. Kind of.
Anyway,
For some reason, leaders tend to take notice when people do hunger strikes.
This is not a hunger strike. They're going to kill him and they're not going to eat until they do it.
That is what a hunger strike is.
I've never heard of someone trying to kill somebody on a hunger strike.
this is like Hunger Strike is a DLC to a main game. The main game is they're trying to kill someone.
The analogies are getting wild here.
Yeah, we're like four.
So it's like a pickleball video game where you're in Ireland. And now the Jewish sect is trying to murder you with 40 guys that are hangry.
Okay, this is
Imagine that.
I don't even know any of the words you just said, but
Me neither.
These people are very dedicated. This kind of strike is very persuasive, at least to the Jewish leaders, because they do listen.
I don't know if they're like pressured into it. I'm not sold on that.
Well, it does say that just 40 Jews did, and then they confronted the priests about it, and then the priests made the demand.
It sounds more like the priests were like, "Oh, you're willing to do it? Okay, cool."
But you know what? You're probably right. To be honest, you're probably right.
Okay, so, but it says here that more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for him, who have bound themselves to an oath neither to eat nor drink until they have killed him. So it's the people that are doing that did the oath that are doing the act. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, it's not really a political strategy. It's more of like an oath for loyalty to
To their cause, yeah.
to a weird cause. Yeah. I don't know. To me, it doesn't seem synonymous with a hunger strike, but maybe that's not the point, and I'm getting sidetracked. I'm sorry.
Point being, Paul's sister's not named.
True. Yeah. Neither is a nephew.
Yeah.
Also, Paul has a sister. I think this is the only time that it's mentioned. I could be wrong on that.
I think so.
Yeah, Paul has siblings. I wonder how they feel about his ministry.
Clearly, they're more sympathetic.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're in Jerusalem during this time too. So,
and now that could just be because they're there for Pentecost.
That would be my belief. Yeah. But either way, it's interesting that the nephew also not stated how young he is, but based on how the priest leads him by the hand away, it makes me think that he is quite young. Yeah. Not like a toddler, but like maybe like 12 to 14.
Yeah. That
would make sense for the young man label. Either way, the fact that he overheard it and that it is providence by the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
If I had to guess, that is the point of the text, is saying that he didn't just happen to hear them, but because this is how God used both the Jews, the child, and the tribune to work together to get Paul towards Rome.
Well, and this is where it's ultimately his trajectory begins to start going towards Rome. He's surrounded by more and more Roman soldiers. He's going to go meet the Roman governor shortly. He's going to we're getting into the Roman ecosystem. Even more.
Okay.
Is that enough about hunger strikes?
I think we've talked plenty about pickleball. Anyway, this is Acts 23, 23 to 35. Then he called 2 of the centurions and said, "Get ready, 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea at the 3rd hour of the night. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix the governor." And he wrote a letter to this effect: "Claudius Lysias, to his excellency, the governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him. Having learned that he was a Roman citizen, and desiring to know the charge for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council. I found that he was being accused about questions about their law, but charged with nothing deserving death nor imprisonment. And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against the man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers also to state before you what they have against him. So the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris." I cannot say that. "And on the next day they returned to the barracks, letting the horsemen go with him. When they had come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from, and when he learned he was from Sicilia, he said, 'I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive.' And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium."
I do find it hilarious. In verse 27, this is the letter. This is to Felix. "This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen." That's not the order of events.
That's not what happened, yeah.
It's like, I learned that he was a Roman citizen, so I went in and saved him. Not, I was about to torture the truth out of him, and then he told us he was a Roman.
Yeah. I mean, it would be pretty bad if he said, "Yeah, we almost beat him to death and beat him and then asked him, but nah, he was a Roman citizen, so it doesn't matter."
Yeah.
No, that would be bad.
And he still did a good job.
Yeah. A lot of this is recap after what happened in the previous chapter and the beginning of this chapter.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's interesting the wording that he chooses to use. He follows it like, yeah, he was being attacked by the Jews. They were going to kill him. Anyway, there was kind of stuff in the middle. And then I brought him to the Sanhedrin. But either way, now that he's being brought by a pretty sizable amount of soldiers.
Now, in fairness, these are probably the 9th Legion. Oh no, I'm going to forget.
You know what, Caleb? I don't care.
I don't know my Roman Legion locations at the time of the 1st century.
That's embarrassing.
Oh no. It's either the 9th or the 12th Legion.
Who doesn't know that?
Is stationed in Alexandria.
You could have just said Roman Legion and then you were so broad, you're not wrong.
Thank you. Anyway, there aren't Roman legionaries at Jerusalem at this time. Generally, probably. There is sometimes hypothesized that there may have been a detachment of Roman legionaries, especially like from Alexandria, especially during Jewish festivals.
That would make sense, yeah.
But likely these are all auxiliaries, not actual legionaries.
Yep.
Okay.
Not that any of that matters.
How long before the legionaries do come? Like what?
70.
Roughly? It is 70?
Well, no, legionaries are all around, but the actual Roman legions descended on Jerusalem during the Jewish Revolt.
Okay. I mean the non-auxiliaries, because I thought there was a period before the actual conquest or destruction of Jerusalem that they put Roman citizens in and they were attacked, and that's what caused destruction. I could be wrong.
I don't think so.
Okay, I could be wrong.
Nothing rings a bell on that.
Either way, me being wrong on multiple accounts, either way, I find it very funny that Paul is placed in Herod's palace.
Yeah.
What's a praetorium?
It's like a palace.
Okay.
Right, Caleb?
Sure.
Because my other translation says palace.
Yes, it's his lodging, but like a...
From context, I thought that's what it was, but I wanted there to be something
It's a lodging.
more.
Well, he had his palace is said earlier to be in Caesarea.
Yeah.
So if I had to guess, this would be the same place.
I don't know if it's... I think it's not like your... I don't know if it's like your main residence. I don't believe so.
Well, Caesarea is the capital of Judea.
Yeah.
For the Roman province, right?
But I don't believe that's the area that Herod reigns over.
Caesarea or Judea. Previously in the, I can't remember which chapter. It might be 20. I could be wrong. When it talks about him dying, Herod dying, the last Herod. Mm-hmm. They do say that he went to his palace in Caesarea, that he was in Jerusalem for whatever festival because he has to be, but then he went back up. And there's multiple, I think, before that where he says that he was in Caesarea because that's where he lived.
There's 2 Caesareas, isn't there?
I think so.
Oh, okay, then never mind. I'm getting everything confused. Never mind.
There's probably like 50 Caesar. It's like how there's Alexandrias during this time. There's like 50 Alexandrias in the world.
But I think there's 2 Caesareas in that, like in...
I think you're right.
Israel.
It's like there's 2 Antiochs as well.
Yeah. Disregard anything I said.
Anyway, you know how there's like a billion Marys in the Bible? It's kind of like that, but with Caesarea.
There's like 3. But yes.
Yeah.
And well, the thing is, it was the most popular female name for that time period.
Point being, he sends an army.
Yeah. A lot of people. Well, to be fair, 40 men is what is said there. They don't know exactly like where their ambush would be, or if it's actually more than 40.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just 40, there's only 40 hungry
guys,
guys, and then the rest are like well-fed.
Well, they could have, those are like zealot whatevers that could have recruited more.
Exactly. I think he's just being safe.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I was reading it. I didn't know if there was theological significance over the amount of people that he brought. Not like the number specifically.
What do the numbers mean?
But the fact that he's so heavily protected.
Yeah.
I don't know, but either way, Paul is basically a significant figure in this region at this point. Being protected super heavily, he's a Roman citizen, so it makes sense that he'd be given very nice lodgings because Caleb, you would know more about this than I would, but Roman citizens weren't allowed to be like fully arrested unless there was a charge against them, but they could be put under house arrest, right?
Yep.
And what house is not being used because currently they're all dead. The Herods, wow. Again, I don't know if there's theological significance in that specifically, but if I had to, it's to show that Paul's better than Herod.
Better?
Paul is better than Herod.
I do think Acts is very pro-Paul.
And this vibe. Yeah.
I haven't said a negative thing about him since like the first 3 chapters.
What? My goodness,
Sorry,
guys.
first 7 chapters. I'm sorry, that wasn't a constructive thing.
Anyway, does anybody have anything else to say about this section?
I do find it hilarious that the why can't I remember his name? Not the name.
The Tribune?
The Tribune orders Paul's accusers to go back to Felix and he orders them to present their case.
Mm-hmm.
I do just find that hilarious. It's just kind of like, you know what? You guys can't handle this disagreement. Go talk to your dad.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his whole thing, what he presents to his letter is very pro Paul.
It is.
I haven't found any reason why he should be put to death or even imprisoned.
Yep,
and they're just arguing about stuff in their own law. So like, whatever.
Yeah.
I imagine that Tribune, was it Claudius Lysias?
Yes.
Is not very happy with this like pseudo authority that the Sanhedrin has in this place.
Oh, yeah.
They're constantly subverting him. They're constantly going over his head. Like these people have been like trying to lynch people and follow their own law and how they should deal with people and not following the Roman way.
I mean, in 20 years, they're going to start, roughly 20 years, give or take. They're going to
be in full blown rebellion and be crushed harshly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Earth salted type stuff.
Yeah, actually. But now he's with Governor Felix, who's the big cheese, the dad, as you put him.
You said it in that phrase in the last 4 episodes.
Have I actually?
Yes. The big cheese. There's a big cheese in every chapter.
I got to point out who the big dog is, you know?
Yeah.
The big cheese.
Big dog.
Anyway.
From Flushed Away.
I mean, Felix does sound like a dog's name, though, doesn't it?
Wow.
I'm just saying.
No, he is a pagan.
That's true.
That's true.
You're calling pagans dogs?
Jesus does.
I mean, you sidestepped the answer, but
anyway, I think that was a good answer.
All right. We're going to start chapter 24 and go from verse 1 to 9. And after the 5 days, the high priest Ananias came down with some elders and a spokesman, one Tertullus. They laid before the governor for their case against Paul. And when he had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, "Since through you we enjoy much peace, and since by your foresight, most excellent Felix, reforms are being made for this nation, in every way and everywhere we accept this with all gratitude. But to detain you no further, I beg you in your kindness to hear us briefly. For we have found this man a plague, one who stirs up riots among all the Jews throughout the world and is the ringleader of this sect of Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, but we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to find out what from him about everything of which we accuse him." The Jews also joined in the charge, affirming that all these things were so.
See, he's bad.
He was going to blaspheme the temple.
In fairness, that is a big deal.
Yeah.
Even to a pagan, it is. This is a local god.
Yeah.
He, at best, and Felix would see the practical applications of just appeasing the local population's religious devotion, but he, like many Jews, may have also understood that local gods would need to be appeased in some way.
Yeah.
Even in his pagan system.
So that's why they're bringing it up, is because it technically would be the business of Roman rule to make sure that the local gods were being properly respected by the locals.
And in fact, that was one of the big appeals that Rome would even make to locals, would be like, hey, under us, you can serve your gods even better.
Yeah.
And we will, like...
it was colonization by synchronization, right?
Yeah. Well, even before they revolted, Caesar, although obviously he himself did not likely even know of this, Caesar would pay for sacrifices even in the Jewish temple. He would have like a, and he would do that. Yeah, he would have a tab. So, and not just in like Judaism, but like many of the religions around the Mediterranean in their empire, the Roman government would pay to appease that local deity.
So you think that the reason they're bringing up the blaspheming the temple thing, rather than kind of the
food laws and circumcision,
infiltrating the Sanhedrin and overturning food laws.
And I think the circumcision is where things really start.
Okay.
Right. But it's that's not anywhere near as what he cares about.
Well, they need something that's clearly important to Tertullus, to Felix.
To Felix.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would make sense.
Cool name though.
Because at that point he is a disturber of the peace and a rioter rather than and one who goes against Roman laws and stuff, rather than just some random dude that they disagree with.
We're going to be right back because Josh is joining us. Josh, you're just joining us now.
I'm not here.
He's Kermit the Frog.
So is that Kermit the Frog?
Is that Jordan B. Peterson?
Actually,
Josh was held up by other things that are very important, but
My
he's
other
here
job.
now.
yeah.
Josh has to work for a living. Not like us. We're professional podcasters.
Yeah. The accused case against Paul is essentially, hey, he's going around, he's stirring up the Jews. And this is bad for Rome. He's going to defile the temple.
He's a big bad guy. Also, you're great. We love you so much.
Yes.
You're so wonderful.
Josh, this is the beginning of chapter 24.
Oh, okay.
1 to
9.
9.
Okay.
And then it appears to be like their main spokesperson goes through all that.
Tertullian, yeah.
And then Luke in narrating kind of just glazes over. And then other people came and gave examples, essentially. Any other comments on that? Or should we move on?
I just think it's funny. They say, you do so many things for us. You do all of these laws, which we love so much. And we're so glad that we can follow them. Anyway,
Kill this
that's
guy.
enough about you. Let's talk about why we're here. Which I think is
How
it's
politics
customary.
should be, you know?
If politics were like that, I would not. I couldn't stand watching them even more than I could now. They're just like, you're so wonderful. We don't mean anything that we're saying, but you're so wonderful.
I would watch
That
this.
is how politics is right now, though, isn't it?
Can you imagine
Sometimes, or it's
like
yelling
a-
at the other
a
person.
political debate, and the end of the debate's like, well, do we kill him or no?
It has nothing to do with like any specific person.
Yes.
It's
watch
just, do we
it.
build a dam here? So who are we voting to kill? Whoa.
And we're gonna watch a Ken Ham NT Wright debate, and then at the end, one of them's being executed.
At
if
the
they
end,
do
Joel
poorly
Osteen
enough.
is killed.
A sacrifice must be made.
What is happening?
I don't know. Josh into the podcasting got kind of wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you missed the pickleball conversation.
I'll tell you later.
Anyway, we'll move on to chapter 24, verses 10 to 21. And when the governor had nodded to him to speak, Paul replied, knowing that for many years you have been a judge over this nation, I cheerfully make my defense. You can verify that this is not more than 12 days since I went up to worship in Jerusalem, and they did not find me disputing with anyone or stirring up a crowd, either in the temple or in the synagogues or in the city. Neither can they prove to you what they now bring up against me. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything laid down in the law and written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust. So I always take pains to have a clear conscience toward both God and man. Now, after several years, I came to bring alms to my nation and present offerings. While I was doing this, they found me purified in the temple, without any crowd or tumult. But some Jews from Asia, they ought to be here before you, and make an accusation, should they have anything against me. Or else let these men themselves say what wrongdoing they have found when I stood before the council. Other than this one thing that I cried out when standing among them, it is with respect to the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you this day.
So he makes reference in that last sentence to his comment that made the Sanhedrin explode.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the only thing he said to them,
Yeah.
basically,
Pretty
besides,
much.
oh, I didn't know you're the head chief. Or the head chief. the chief priest. Chief
Hey, I
priest.
didn't know you're the head cheese.
The big cheese. Get it
Head
right.
cheese. Head cheese is something else.
Oh, you're in charge? I was looking for the manager.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. I do find it interesting that his whole point is like, they say this, but can they prove it? Also, where's the people that were originally there when this all went down? They should be the ones that are here.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're the ones who actually made the accusation.
Yeah.
These
also-
guys only made one accusation. I've only talked to them about one thing.
He slides in that he's like, hey, all they're accusing me of doing is believing all the things they believe.
Yep.
That's pretty clever. He goes, they call me a Jewish sect, but I just believe all the stuff that they believe. So really, we're just debating their theology. And so he's kind of making this about like, hey, I know you don't really care about the distinctives between the sects, But here,
if you did.
like, to me, this is Paul kind of trying to get the case thrown out. Where he's like, I know you don't care about the resurrection, but that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
That's why they're mad. I was there in the temple, not doing anything wrong until we disagreed on specific theological issues.
Yep. That's genius, because that was also what Pilate said to the Jews about Jesus, where they were like, this is your matter. This is about your law. I don't care. Go. And then they were like, no, crucify him. He's going to do stuff against Caesar. And so like Paul's making it about the scripture, which he knows that they could care less about that argument.
Well, and in fairness, it is. It is about the law.
Yeah.
It is about
Actually,
scripture. It is about
there's no
the
actual
Jewish
law he's broken.
Yeah, the core of the Jewish religion is what it's about.
Yeah.
Right.
However, by them calling him like a sect and stuff like that, at least as far as my knowledge goes, they're appealing to this idea of like different cultic practices. That there are people who may they obey the gods, they obey the emperor, whatever. In Judea would be obviously their own law, but a sect, a cult, could go against the emperor, and they were treated with big disdain. Many of them, some of them weren't, but some of them were treated like, oh, there's this new like pseudo religion that's popped up, or small belief group, but they are either treated with suspicion, or some of them are in open rebellion to the emperor.
Yeah. Sects of
Usually believed by wives.
Accepted religions in Rome were generally thought of as approved. Generally speaking, it was like the Gnostic and the secret religions, the ones that are very independent. That's the ones in which Rome was more
right.
So
and you
deeply suspicious of.
This doesn't have anything to do with that.
Generally, how Rome didn't normally treat Christians as a different sect. Not.
Well, I think that's what Paul's appealing to. It's like, we have the same faith in our fathers.
Yeah.
Right.
And they'll call me a sect, and we're just kind of, hey, we're basically
we have a theological debate.
Just they don't follow it through, because I believe in Jesus.
We're two peas in a pod, but this guy doesn't believe in the resurrection.
Actually, we do. The argument is, yeah, we do. Well, then why don't you believe in Jesus?
Well, that's kind of the thing people don't realize about the Pharisees. We think of it as like the polar opposite of Christianity. It's like, no, they were the closest sect to Christianity that they had to kind of subvert. So I think Paul's doing a real clever thing here by not making them look diametrically opposed. They're just kind of.
Well, he's very smartly playing both sides. He's saying that he is part of them, but they disagree with him. And so actually this is an internal conflict that you have no business with.
Yep.
Also, the Romans, they love me.
Yes.
Which is true, kind of.
Imagine how good this podcast could be if we were trained in rhetoric the same way Paul was.
Are you not?
No, I'm not.
I'm just kidding.
What do you,
What's the...
I think he means
imagine if we knew how to talk.
Imagine if we knew how to talk.
Imagine if we were good at what we were doing right now.
Yeah.
Not like this. You guys'
idea for the podcast is that we get better.
Not like the way you guys are currently talking. That sucks. Imagine if you were better.
Hey, did you notice how I said we, not you?
No, I'm making this about me.
This is about me.
No, I'm just like you see?
We're getting very close to where we start derailing the podcast, so let's power through this, guys.
Okay. I'm going to finish it up, and then we can go back and talk about things if we want.
Beautiful.
But this is chapter 24, 22 to 27. But Felix, having a rather accurate knowledge of the way, put them off, saying, while Lysias the tribune comes down, I will decide your case. Then he gave orders to the centurion, they should be kept in custody, but have some liberty, and that none of his friends should be prevented from attending his needs. After some days, Felix came with his wife, Drusilla, who was Jewish, and he sent for Paul and heard him speak about the faith in Jesus Christ. And he reasoned about the righteousness and self-control and the coming judgment. Felix was alarmed and said, go away for the present. When I get an opportunity, I will summon you. At the same time, he hoped that money would be given him by Paul. So he sent for him often and conversed with him. When 2 years had elapsed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, and desiring to do the Jews a favor, Felix left Paul in prison.
Extortion.
Yeah.
Also, I do find it funny where it's like, hey, honey, you're a Jew and you know a lot about Jewish stuff. And it says even Felix knows a lot about the way, like he's aware.
Which would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is he brings Paul to like, hey, just talk about Jesus, talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't directly say this in the text, but he gets alarmed. And the only thing that I can really read into it though, is that his wife was like, you know what? Yeah, no, that makes sense. like Paul's convincing his wife.
Right.
And he's like, go away. Leave me.
Yeah. That's funny. I like to think that he's just on board the whole time. Like, oh yeah, this sounds great. This is awesome. Also, and then Paul says, also, there will be a coming judgment day where the world will be judged and everyone's sins. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool, dude. Can you give me money, please?
Yeah.
Which
Paul's not about.
No.
Also, he has none.
Why would he give him money?
It's just the way the world works.
Like a bribe? Is that
kind
what's
of
getting across?
I think so. Because there's a lot in the law that Paul would know about not bribing judges.
Right.
And
yeah,
about how the corruption of the judicial system is exactly one of the things that God often talks about how he hates.
Minor prophets are all over it.
And it's
some wisdom literature.
one
too.
of the biggest markers of like the fall of Israel was the corruption of the judges.
The courts and the palace. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that it does say that he went and visited him, but it also says that his reasons for doing so was just money. And that's interesting to me because we usually get like motivation and stuff out of Acts. Like there's a lot of reasons he did this because, but like you said, it seems like he's somewhat convinced by his arguments, knows a lot about the way. His wife seems to know a lot about the way, but then it kind of just falls flat.
Yeah.
And that's sad to me.
And then he's wanting to do a favor to the Jews. So he's like, I'll just leave him in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
liberty.
like,
Well, yeah, that's Festus, but
Some
yeah.
liberty.
yeah. And it's kind of like it's this guy's problem now.
Yeah.
Which you kind of get this sense at the beginning because Felix is like listening to him and all this stuff. That you're like, oh, maybe Felix isn't that bad. Nah.
He's just neutral at best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it's Felix or Festus, but this was one of the topics that people debated whether or not Acts was like historically accurate or not, because I can't remember which of the two it was, but they said that there was either Felix or Festus was not the regional governor during this time. There was no record. And then later on, they found records of it. Like not that long ago. I think it was only like 20 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Which showed that Luke, when he recorded that one of these two was in charge, it was only for like 2 years. And for Paul to be here during that time is kind of like a big deal.
It lines up.
Yeah. But either way, I just think it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those smaller details that does give Luke and Acts some historical validity.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just some story being told by some dude.
Yeah. We can argue whether it needs that or not, right? Like whether we should try and go back and historically prove every minute of it.
Right. It's useful if you're talking to someone who doesn't believe in the Bible and they try to bring it against you.
But proving that the Bible is a true historical document doesn't necessarily prove its theological significance.
No, but it makes it harder for them to deny it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The historicity of the Gospels, sure.
Yes.
But
Indeed.
Felix literally spoke to Paul for 2 years and didn't understand the gospel.
Yep.
So it's
he
like
got scared about
right, like that's
Jesus
what
with a double-edged sword coming out of his mouth and all that.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what Paul was preaching. I hope that's it. But anyways, that just hits me a little bit. Like
Started talking about the 10 hills of Rome, and he went, "Ooh, maybe you're
Almost like it's the Holy Spirit which opens and convicts and calls.
Whoa,
yeah. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like historicity is awesome, and those minute details are great for confirmation and encouragement.
But the language is pretty soft on Felix. Yeah, he was open more to the way. He allowed him to have more free reign in Caesarea and his house and stuff like that. But then when he heard this stuff, he was a little drawn back, and he just kind of kept status quo from that point on. Then obviously, I can't pronounce Roman names. I'm so sorry. Festus. It just means happy in Latin. But
Porcius Festus.
thank you.
In his 9/11. That makes me happy.
Porsche's Festus. Nice. If I got a Porsche, I would put Festus on the back.
That would be hilarious, right?
Actually,
Kind of like you got to do the Ahura Mazda if you get a
Yeah,
Mazda.
if I get a Mazda, I got to put a Hura on the back.
I don't get it.
Well,
These are great car jokes, man.
these are great car jokes that incorporate, ancient religion. So
Ancient one name
Keep
mentioned
up,
in
dude.
the Bible. Anyway,
if anyone got the Ahura Mazda joke, please message me. Whatever.
I thought it was a Star Trek reference at first. But,
No, I've never watched it.
I think it's fair to say this was Axe unless someone has something.
Yeah, I think that's all Axe.
All of Axe. There's nothing left. This is we still have
That's what
4
ends.
chapters.
A neutral party not doing anything.
Paul is deeper into the Roman system.
Yeah.
The Lord has come to him and told him, hey, you're going to proclaim in Rome.
Yeah, we're reaching the last stretch. He's now, he's in prison right now, but he's going to be on his way to Rome, and then that's the end.
He's been left to Rome.
You've made the joke already.
Well, also,
No one laughed.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Joe.
Joel,
Yeah.
seeing how we've already been derailing a little bit, maybe we should wrap this up.
You would like me to officially derail the podcast? Is that what you're asking?
we running this thing off the tracks.
Let's do it, Josh.
That was a cat.
It sounded more like Gary to me.
Yeah, Joel,
More like Gareth
do
to
the outro.
Like Gareth. Gareth the Irish snail from SpongeBob.
in the episode, Joel.
Yeah, if you've listened this far, I'd like to thank you personally right now. Thank you. If you'd like to listen to more of the Second Rate Saints podcast, you can check out all of our past and future episodes on secondраtesaints.com. If you would like to support the podcast, you can check us out at buymeacoffee.com/secondраtesaints or use the link on our website. If you'd like to check out our book, posts, and blog reviews, blog posts and book reviews, you can check us out at secondраtesaints.com. Yeah, follow us on Instagram and X, and we'll be talking to you, same time next week, right?
Same bat
We'll
channel,
see.
same bat. What is it? How does it?
I don't know what
place?
you're talking about.
You guys need to watch the Deja Vu channel.
I actually
Deja
know
Vu
what you're
channel.
talking about. That's wild.
Deja Vu
That's
channel
the
was kinda
Batman
wild.
animated series, right?
No, that's the live action.
What are they
never mind,
airing
I
now
got
that the
mixed up.
Cosby show's off?
This has been the Twilight Zone.
If you want.